Okay, and so this session that I'm going to be starting with today then for the webinar series is all around career policy, programme, strategy and development plan. What are they basically and how do I prepare for them? I realise that it's probably not the most engaging and kind of like sexiest of titles to start really, but that said, it is Gatsby Benchmark 1, so we should start with a 1, and also we're really starting to pick up from career leader training that we do nationally that people are starting to struggle with this really, to say, well, what does this actually mean, and how do we actually make sure that that people can understand what these different terms are and to move forward. Now, what I'm going to be looking at throughout the course of this particular session, so you've got the context there, which was in the webinar information, but I've just set together just 3 outcomes by the end of this session. First of all, it's that you hopefully by the end of the session you'll be able to understand the different meanings between the following words in the context of career that is often associated with a stable careers program. Here I'm talking about policy, strategy, program and development. We're looking at understanding what is required for each of these documents, mainly to help with those 3 I's then really, the intent, implementation and impact. And finally also that you start to review best practice approach to developing and reviewing a careers policy. So we're spending quite a lot of time looking at that throughout this session. Now, just a little bit on kind of the kind of webinar etiquette before we go forward really. So first of all, you may be coming to terms with the fact at the moment that you've all been muted and also that your video is set off as default. And that's mainly really so that we can avoid us all coming on today and playing a bit of webinar bingo, which might be more about, I can't hear you, it's all crackling, is that such and such over there? All these kind of things that often on video conferences with more than 10 or more. So this is why. The session will last approximately 30 to 40 minutes. It is being recorded, and also it will be uploaded to the website so that you can access it at a later date. So we've done that mainly because we know with the pressures of COVID-19 and everybody working from home, there may well be times that you have to go off and do things at home throughout the session, or it might not be practical at all for you to watch this webinar until the evening. So we've done that in terms of recording to make sure that it is going to be practical for you. So the other part as well is that we've got this chat facility enabled all the way through. So hopefully you'll see on the bar where there's a section there that says chats, and from there hopefully I should be able to see throughout. If you've got any questions, you can post them through that chat facility. So I'll look out for that. But if I miss it at all for any reason, then I'll certainly look to address those at the end too. Okay. Smashing. So let's get started then really and start to look at the topic that we're looking at today with the programme. Now, this one here is the Statutory Careers Guidance. We know all about this now. It's been around for over 2 years. January 2018 first came out, and then updated October 2018. And that's where we first got this notion then about a stable careers programme, and that we all have to publish this programme onto the website. So we're all scratching our heads a little bit to think, well, what is it we're supposed to be publishing and what's supposed to be in that? Take that on, and we've got some further information about this stable careers programme. That's benchmark 1. Every school should have a stable structured programme. Again, little in the way of support about what that actually means, but also this notion that it needs to be published on the website and regularly evaluated too. So we know it's there, we know we've got to be doing these things, and I'm sure we've probably all by now got documents uploaded onto the website to meet that statutory element. One of the few musts of the statutory guidance that we have our programmes published. What I want to be doing in this webinar, though, is really start to think a bit more about, well, actually, what do these different documents mean and look like, and what should actually be in an effective careers policy, careers programme, careers strategy, careers development plan. The reference point I'm going to be using for a lot of this sits with the CDI, Career Development Institute, and in particular, Anthony Barnes, who's a very experienced and well-respected career theorist and practitioner, I think. He's put together a briefing paper in November 2019 called Developing a Careers Policy, briefing for schools, special schools and colleges. And if I just exit this, you'll be able to see this is what it looks like. So it's an 8-page document, and it gives a little bit more about what it's there to do, some of the terminologies, what is a policy, all those kind of things, roles. And then there's quite a brief guide towards the end here about how to put one together. Come back onto this because from what I'm doing today, we're going to be looking at some of the definitions from this guide, but we're going to be looking towards a guide that Complete Careers has ourselves, that's published on our CareerMark website for members, but we're going to share for all today that you've got access to that and to work on, and hopefully it might be of use to you throughout COVID-19 to be able to develop that. But I'll share these slides with you anyway by the end of this session. You've got the link built in there for a bit of further reading. Now, what the definitions mean then in this publication by Anthony Barnes, CDI, starting here with the careers policy. So on the left-hand column, it talks about what it is, the careers policy, and it's that statement of the guiding principles which underpin the school's careers programme, looking at 5 main areas: values and vision, statutory requirements and expectation, and learner entitlement, management and delivery, engagement of stakeholders and partners. Don't worry too much about those, because we'll go into far more depth in a few moments on the makeup of the policy. But this quote here, I find quite useful, really, just to start to look at where it relates to some of the other terms that we use within careers. And here it really starts to underline that, I guess, the careers policy just acts more as that glue then, really, to bring together all of the documentation and all of the provision that you've got going on within your organisation. And by that is saying that a career policy, therefore, underpins that school's career strategy and the plans, being development plans, and should be linked to the school improvement development plan. So it underpins the strategy and the career development plan, and should be linked to that overarching school development plan. Reference point for the school's annual self-assessment, self-evaluation of the careers programme part, and the policy should be reviewed every 2 years. For those that are more visual learners like me, basically what it's saying here then, it's the one document that brings together all of these factors, really, from documentation such as the strategy, the careers programme, the audits, the school improvement plan, the career development plan, all under the one house there of the policy, but also bringing in further aspects such as the aims and outcomes of your programme, the local context, and some of the national factors such as the statutory guidance, Gatsby and CDI. So if the policy is more the glue then to bring it all together, what is the strategy? And again, I've taken this as a quote, and this is from the same CDI Anthony Barnes paper, and this is where it says that the strategy is that top level plan of action to achieve the intentions and the goal of the policy and the priorities identified in the career improvement. So I guess it's that very concise information really that you can have in a might be one page or two-sided paper that you can give to your governors, to your senior leadership team, to your stakeholders, that says, right, this is what we're doing here. So this is what we're doing by what we need to be doing from the statutory requirements and Gatsby, and where we're up to against the achievement of that. Also, what our aims and outcomes are, and also what are the key priorities that we're focusing on right now from our career development, career improvement plan. So it's that top line, top level information that you want all strategic partners to really understand just what it is you're doing right now. The program and development plan definition, you'll see that there aren't any quotations attached to this because it doesn't really go on to say that in the CDI paper. So these are my own, and again, feel free to modify and change them. My own thoughts on this then with the careers programme. The careers programme provides the detail of the overall careers provision in the school to include the careers education, information, the advice and the guidance aspects, as well as the contribution of others. It outlines where and when the careers policy and strategy are implemented. I'll keep coming back to this term implementation because obviously it's very resonates with Ofsted, but with programme, think implementation. Think all strands of your careers provision, from the education and the curriculum, through the tutorials, through PSHE, through the other subject areas, also the information platforms, the people that are supporting the programme to do with information and advice and the guidance provision, and also employers, experiences of the workplace, encounters, all these other things that actually look at how we're going to implement what we're trying to set out in the strategy and the policy. That's very much what we're looking at here in the way of the program, certainly in my eyes anyway. Finally, the development plan. The development plan details the development areas from programme evaluation. So when you engage in monitoring, review and evaluation, in order to get the continuous improvement from that, it needs to be documented clearly, the analysis of the programme, what's working well, what's not working so well in the development plan, with a clear view from evaluation, what you're taking forward to actually want to develop further, as well as broader areas about where you're up to with Gatsby and what your plan is to be able to meet further aspects of the benchmark that you might want to be developing over the next year. Also things like destinations, the analysis of your trends about where people are going, how many learners are NEET, how many have gone on from level 2 to level 3. That's cross-analysis is going to be more than useful to be able to get that level of information. Also, if any of you are going for the quality and careers standards, you'll have an assessment which will always come with recommendations, which can also inform your annual development plan. And finally, it's about how there's that connectivity really between what you're doing as the careers department and the overall aims of the school in terms of the overall development plan organisation. Okay, so what I just want to take us on to now then really is just to look at one of these documents in far more detail. And for this one, I'm choosing the policy, because as I mentioned already before, this is the one document that glues it all together kind of thing, and can really help us to get that overall overview, I guess, really, for want of a better word, of what it is that we're trying to do in our organisation. So, so the policy checklist, which I'll show you in a few moments, is one of the 20+ support documents that's on the members area of the CareerMark website. The way we've set this out is designed to be future-proof. And what I mean by that really is that I know a number of you might have changed your layout of your careers policy to look through the Gatsby benchmarks, to look at numbers 1 to 8, or maybe to look at statutory guidance and the headlines there. The problem is these things change with time. So what we've done is we've looked at more of the underlining components rather than the headline figures. By doing so, it makes it more future-proof, tweak it over the years rather than hopefully having to rewrite. What we're doing at the moment is making this document freely available to non-career mark members throughout the COVID-19 period, just because for some of you it might be a good opportunity to work on some of these developments, so we don't want to get in the way of progress. And obviously, if you are working on it and find it useful or find it less than useful, we just appreciate any feedback to see how it might have helped or hindered your development. Okay, so here is the career policy checklist. There are 11 areas to it. So all I've got here is the headline about what are the component parts, and then I'm just going to go through each of those parts just so that you've got a flavour about what's expected in each section. So first of all, you'll also see down the right-hand column about where each of these kind of components of the policy relates to the intent, implementation and impact. So I'll show that to you a bit later on as a visual too. First of all, it starts with the introduction and then the description of the organisation that looks at the key characteristics of your organisation. Is then very much a question of that statement of intent. What are the aims and outcomes of our career programme? What is it we're trying to do? What do we want our young people to be like really throughout their schooling at your organisation? What do we want them to have picked up in the way of knowledge, skills and attitudes? Be able to successfully cope with transitions, following on from your school onto other areas, but also to equip them with the capabilities to make decisions and cope with transitions throughout their lives. That's what it is we're trying to set up to do. We need to reference that somehow in how, what the aim and the outcomes are for our programme. We then come on to more of the implementation part, and this is more about the programme nature then, therefore, which looks there more for about details of your curriculum. Provision, methodology, assessment, recording, reporting, monitoring, review and evaluating resources. Looking at the detail of what's actually happening. Along with that then is also about what are our arrangements for staffing and leading and coordinating careers provision. Also, what about things like sensitive, controversial issues, safeguarding, GDPR? What about the roles and contribution of partners? Monitoring, reviewing, evaluating, and continuous improvement. How are we intending to do that? Any works towards the quality standards, the quality and career standards that can help to evidence what we're doing. Listing together other related policies. And then finally, the detailed, the process, consultation, dissemination of the policy. So I'll go through each of these then. It's not terribly lengthy. Your policy doesn't have to be terribly lengthy at all. It just needs to detail what it is that you're intending to do to be able to show to all your stakeholders what's happening in your organisation for careers delivery. It starts with the introduction, and this is where we're starting to think about a lot of the key documentations that need to be considered throughout planning an effective careers policy. And obviously in there, you'd expect to see the statutory guidance, the careers strategy, reference to the Gatsby benchmarks, the Gatsby Foundation, and the Compass tool for supporting and self-assessment. It could then expect it to be things like a framework for expected outcomes of what you want your young people to develop through careers and employability and enterprise education. also about the Education Acts, but also might be things towards the Quality and Career Standard, Career Mark 7, better practice, broader areas. So it's about what things are influencing you in terms of your design from wider factors such as policy, practice, best practice, statutory requirements. The next part here then is thinking about, before we can actually then go on to define our aims and outcomes for the programme, we need to have a good understanding about our organisation itself. And here I mean, what kind of things are unique to our organisation? So thinking about the geographical location, the student intake and the ages, the social, ethnic and religious mix, special needs and abilities of the students, student destination information. It might be more about the demographics to do with the areas of deprivation, socio-economic factors, those kind of things that really make up the your organisation and the learners that represent it. Think, well, what extra bits do they need then, other than the statutory guidance, then to really, it might be about more in the way of inspiration, raising achievements, raising aspirations, if there's social mobility factors life in your organisation. Following on from that description of the organisation, you can then really start to pin down, nail down the aims and the outcomes of your career programme. What is it we're trying to achieve here? Okay, what are the aims and what are the stated outcomes? Now, again, with any attention to defining what it is you're trying to do, you can either use this from David Andrews, who's well respected in the careers field. And obviously, he's spoken at our conferences many times over the years. And he'll always say that when it comes to actually determining the aims and the outcomes for what you want to do, you've got two choices. You can either start with a blank piece of paper and write your aims and write the details of the outcomes for what you want your young people to achieve. So you can do that completely bespoke and on your own. The second choice is that you can start with best practice, with kind of guidance about what's out there already, and you can modify that to meet the needs of your organisation. I think the latter can certainly help you in terms of time, and also to look at the considerations that have been made over the years, really, from decades of occupational choice approach. And that's largely where the CDI framework comes in. So here it details 3 broad aims, which is about helping young people to develop the self-awareness, to help them to be more, to investigate opportunities in learning and work. So basically find out a lot more about learning opportunities and the full range of career opportunities, and also more about the career management, the decision-making, the preparation for transitions. Those are the 3 aims, underpinned by 17 learning outcomes from Key Stage 2. Again, a really, really useful reference point, non-statutory, but perfectly adequate to start with, and then to be able to differentiate to meet the needs of your learners. It might be that you take those as they are and have as your aims and outcomes. It might be that you differentiate to meet the needs. So those are there, and I'd certainly recommend that as a starting point to look at the aims and outcomes. Then also got to look at things like how we're making sure that people, learners are getting access to independent careers guidance from years 8 to 13, which is the statutory guidance, and also things like how you intend to meet the needs of all pupils, which is your Gatsby benchmark 3. You'll notice there are elements in blue here throughout this, and this is where Gatsby really references across your policy. So all 8 Gatsby benchmarks will feature in different areas of this policy checklist, because looking at more from an intent, implementation and impact, you can then bring in Gatsby to the relevant areas. Okay, now moving on to more Number 4, which is the Careers Guidance CIG curriculum. So here I mean the overall provision. This is the careers program, therefore, and also that implementation that we mentioned before. So here I've mentioned careers cannot be confined to a specific timetable allocation, but should be delivered within a whole school organisation approach. Give specific detail of what is happening in your organisation through the following forms of provision. So we're talking about, this is the mechanics about where career learning can take place. It could be a discrete curriculum time, PSHE or careers on the curriculum. It could be through other subject areas, gaps benchmark 4, how we're bringing that in. Career activities and events that will have timetable throughout the year that are on the calendar. Work-related learning to include experiences of the workplace, enterprise activities, and employer encounters. Wider curriculum activities, pastoral care and guidance, tutorials and assemblies, and also inputs from and visits to things like further education, higher education, and apprenticeship provision. All of the above curriculum opportunities should be utilised to consider how best to deliver the content of your careers programme from the aims and outcomes that were stated above in section 3. So this is kind of like the where career learning can come in. The next part is more about, I guess, more to do with the how, and looking at the methodology then, about how we can get things across. And this is about bringing in specialist people, review, reflection throughout, looking at labour market information, looking at decision-making, target setting, circle time, use of ICT packages, discussions, drama and role play, being as broad and as imaginative as possible to think about, okay, let's move away from death by worksheets. It does have a role to play, of course, to be able to record career learning, but career learning can come in a whole range of different facets. So thinking about which ones could be best and how to get the content across. The content is basically, therefore, taken directly from your aims and outcomes that you've got from the CDI. It's about how you then get those aims and outcomes over in a planned approach using a range of methods. We also need to give consideration about how career learning, like any other subject area in the curriculum, should be assessed, recorded, and reported. Again, this links quite nicely with gaps benchmark 3 and the recording nature here. But for example, how are we hoping to record examples of student achievement? How's that going to be recognised? We used to have the National Record of Achievements. Those have gone now, kind of thing. But have we got another system in place that might help to document progress and to document evidence of a journey of career learning? What about the resources here too? So what about things like the budget? Might be some chuckles there perhaps, but what is the budget for career-related learning? System managing, maintaining, teaching resources, but also where they're located to. Also looking at the information provision too. So it might be virtual learning environments, a dedicated website, your social media channel or newsletters. You might still have a physical presence with space for physical career resources such as books and prospectuses. The school's website might have a separate careers section. It's about how we're managing that effectively so that we've got the right kind of information for learners, parents, employers and staff. But also about the careers information subscriptions we might have for software. A whole range of different organisations that can provide that for us, and also things like posters and displays. Finally, is looking more towards the advice and guidance then, so anybody that can support learners on a one-to-one level for basic careers advice to the Level 6 Professional Careers Guidance. Once we've got a really clear overview for everything we've talked about here, then in terms of the content of the programme, how it's to be delivered, what careers information supports it, what the contribution of others, how is it going to be recorded, we've then got the careers programme, essentially, and the implementation of what we're trying to do. And here comes a really useful opportunity, rather than to keep it as our best kept secret, to really be able to celebrate and share with all stakeholders the learner entitlement that says, well, you know, celebrating to learners, say, this is what we're investing in you, this is all the things that we're doing, and this is why, and this is what you can expect to get in years 7 and 8. For parents and carers that we want, who are key stakeholders here to support with their child's career learning, it really helps them to know what they can expect their learners, their child to develop in terms of career learning, so they can think about how they can then support it. The role of the career leader comes next. Some key components that might look towards your role as career leader, but fundamentally there's a whole list of about 28 or so different responsibilities now through the Careers and Enterprise Company Career Leader publication. So I advise you to look at that and to look at your role as career leader in this part here. Looking at things like GDPR, safeguarding needs to be fundamental factors really throughout your programme, your policy, to think about, well, how are we making sure that we can hold key principles of safeguarding and GDPR with all of the activities we engage with the careers program. Looking at across a whole range of partners, from enterprise advisors, coordinators, Lincolnshire and UniConnect providers, careers guidance providers, work experience providers, the whole spectrum. We then got to make sure we give adequate attention to monitoring, review and evaluating and continue improving. This is looking at all the elements of the implementation, from the careers ed, being in the curriculum across the different subject areas, but also as a discrete lesson, but also looking across your contribution of others, your careers information, your advice and guidance, and the whole aspects of careers education, information, advice, guidance, and contribution of others. How are we monitoring what's going on? How are we reviewing them to make sure that what was delivered is what we expected, and how are we evaluating them to make sure that we can start to think a bit more about feedback from learners and getting some impact there about how well they've been received from stakeholders. All of this contributes to your continuous improvements and development plan, to be able to make sure that it informs that further development. I'll come on to that in a few moments because I've got a slide around this. Finally, the quality standards, other relating policies, and just how we're looking at consulting on this policy with your senior leadership team. How is it disseminated to all staff, and how regularly is it reviewed and signed off? So hopefully that document might be of use to you. I can certainly email it round. I can ask Lucy to do that, and our admin team to do that today or early next week. And we appreciate any feedback that you might have on if it's been useful or not. Now, just moving forward and conscious of time, but we're coming towards a close here. I just wanted to present as a visual, really, just how these 4 terms that we've been looking at really relate to the key elements of Ofsted now, with intent, implementation and impact. So, sorry, this final one here, it should be careers policy. Apologies for that. I haven't QA'd this by the look of this. So the careers policy, which is this last part here, as we've just been looking at, outlines everything really about how we're intending our our careers provision, how we're hoping to implement this, and what is our plan for monitoring the impact of it. This is all the careers policy rather than the programme. The strategy gives us that top line figure, as we mentioned before, of the intent. The careers programme is how we're going to deliver it. So it's about detailing on the calendar and as an overview about all of these aspects of curriculum, advice, guidance, information to how we're going to meet the aims. And obviously that career development plan then gives us that impact. Career development plan giving us not just the results of monitoring, review and evaluation, but also Gatsby benchmark scores. It might be more about provision from the Quality and Career Standard in terms of recommended action, but also whole other factors that really can help us to think about where we're going next. That analysis more than anything then really of what we're doing well and what we need to improve on. So rattle through the end there a little bit quickly because I'm conscious of time, and I mentioned it was going to be 30 to 40 minutes and we're coming up to the 40-minute part there. I'm just going to open up here to think about what kind of questions might have arrived throughout the session. I think I got a little bit too passionate and didn't quite keep up to date with some of these questions, so apologies if that's the case. So I'm just going to look through now to see if anybody else has have asked any questions, but do add more questions through the chat facilities if you'd like to. Looking at this, it looks like one or two might have struggled a little bit with hearing, but I think that might, by the look of this, been individual machines perhaps, because others seem to be okay. Lucy's mentioned here as well that it's recording, so therefore you will have access to all the materials on here, which will be uploaded to the website after today. Yeah, so Richard Hughes, Confident Choices, quite rightly pointing out that local context is so important for good intent and strategy, you know, underlining that factor there. Question about will you receive a copy of the presentation? What we'll do is we'll send it through Emily, probably at Confident Choices, the slides and the document I've been going through today, just so that you can get that disseminated and sent out. Just still scrolling through, so apologies for the silence. Okay, so good question here from Carly as well. In regards to the login for non-career mark members, do we just register? Sorry, I wasn't clear there, I'm afraid, because what I mean here is that anybody that's working towards Quality and Career Standard through our approach with Complete Careers and Career Mark will be members, and therefore you'll have your own logins, and you should be able to just get onto the Career Mark website, look at the back end of it, which the open public can't see, and be able to start documents that we've got set up. One that I've just gone through, one of them being so. But what we're going to do is for non-career mark members, we're going to share that one publication anyway, really, because hopefully it might plug a gap really to help you developing things like policies and programs and strategies if you find that you've got a bit more time than normal. Yeah. Great. Question. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. And I think really overall, that seems to be the questions that seem to have come through. So what I just want to do just to conclude really is to thank every one of you for joining us today. So really thrilled with just how many have attended this first webinar. Must give credit to Alex Nightingale from the Careers and Enterprise Company and Greater Lincolnshire LEP, because this was very much his concept, and it really has snowballed from there. And we've got so many contributions coming up in the coming weeks. Next week is going to be Ellis Potter from Lincolnshire, and he's going to be looking at supporting with FE and HE encounters. Word of warning, it is next Thursday rather than Friday. All the others will be Friday morning, but obviously it's bank holiday next Friday, but that'll be the same time at 11 o'clock on Thursday. But no, thank you ever so much for contributing, coming along. If you've got any further questions, you've got my email address from the slide there. But just to reiterate, it's John Ambrose@complete-careers.com. Do send through any kind of comments or questions, and I'd be more than happy to pick them up. But I just hope you all stay safe and well, and that you enjoy your weekend. Thank you. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.